The following stories are from members of Hanmaum Church in South Korea. They aired on a Korean Christian TV network called C Channel and were dubbed in English.
Hello, I'm Hyun-Young Sun from Hanmaum Church in Chuncheon. I became lost while trying to find a way to change the world through education. But through meeting the risen Jesus, I discovered a guaranteed path to change the world. I would like to share about the grace of God that showed me this way. When I was in high school, I started liking books because my mom and sister liked literature. But as I read more, I started having critical thoughts. Why do the friends around me need to be potential competitors? What is a meaningful and valuable life, and what should I do to live that life? I had so many questions like these, but nobody could give me satisfying answers. This led me to become even more engrossed with books, and I expanded my readings to the fields of social science and philosophy. After that, my thoughts directed me to the question, how can I change this world to become a better place? When I applied to the Gwangju University of Education, I met a brother from a Christian missions club, heard the gospel, and began to believe in Jesus. After my acceptance to the university, I joined the club and participated in their Bible studies and training programs. When I saw myself gradually changing, I began to think that the gospel could have the power to change this world. In particular, the club focused on one-to-one discipleship training and world missions, and I spent much of my college life evangelizing, raising disciples, and receiving spiritual training. Even when I went to the military, I was extremely busy. In order to become a faithful leader, I did as I had learned from the club, and I made a to-do checklist with items like doing QT, praying, reading the Bible, memorizing verses, evangelizing, raising disciples, serving, exercising, and studying. I checked myself every day and led a Bible study group. And on weekends, I made a 5-week study program for new believers at the military church, and it resulted in more and more believers every week. With all this happening, I was busy with all the spiritual training and different ministries in the military, but if I couldn't check off all the boxes on my list, I felt guilty for not trying harder. Though the scriptures say that the truth will set me free, I didn't feel free. But because Jesus had said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me," I thought that following Jesus should be hard, and that my endurance and devotion was needed to become a real disciple of Jesus. Finishing my service at the military, I went back to school and shared about Jesus, who loved us so much that he sacrificed himself on the cross. But when I met people who rejected this news, I would get very annoyed. And when I saw all the people that I had trained going back to their old lifestyles to chase the things of this world, I started to doubt whether or not I could really change the world with this method. After I got married, I sought an alternative way to change the world, and I came to the conclusion that education was the way. I went to a graduate school for Korean literature, believing that if I gained insight into the humanities, I would become a more logical and reasonable person. Additionally, I worked at a practical school called the Gwangju Alternative Elementary School to expand my expertise, and I worked so hard that I regularly went home after midnight. As my personal research there progressed, I began to think that education and literature might be a great way to change the world. I enrolled in a doctorate program to study new ways to teach literature and thought about writing a textbook based on my findings. As I focused more on my studies in graduate school, I began to feel frustrated with my job as a teacher at this elementary school. Thoughts like, do I really need to be here? There's so much more work to be done. And I need to accomplish something big and soon kept revolving around my head. I got tired of being with students and found studying alone much more enjoyable. I also, gradually, began to neglect my family life as well. I prepared my research plans for a long time, and my professor liked it because it could improve the current literature curriculum and had great expectations for me. But then, I failed the qualifying exam because I hadn't gotten a good enough grade in classic literature, which I had assumed I would do well in. I thought that I had given up my safe teaching career for the glory of God, but after having failed the qualifiers, I was very frustrated. Not long ago, I had been in joyful tears, thinking that I had found God's vision, but my attitude turned cold towards God after I got my results back from the qualifiers. Then, I cried in frustration, thinking, why does nothing go smoothly in my life? Why did everything have to be so hard? While I was struggling in despair, a fellow member from the Christian club that I had trained with gave me a call. He said that, for all these years, I hadn't believed in Jesus and shared Bible verses with me. He said that the most basic sin that the Holy Spirit condemns is the sin of not believing in Jesus Christ, and that we only receive salvation when we believe that Jesus is Lord in our hearts. Until that point, I had never even considered that I could be among the non-believers. And I was certain that I would go to heaven if I died right now. But that brother suggested that I repent of the sin of not believing in Jesus Christ and receive Him as my Lord in my heart. Then, all of a sudden, he asked me, Hyun-Young, who is Jesus Christ in your life? He's my Lord, of course. Hyun-Young, is Jesus really your Lord? Yes, Jesus is my Lord. To be honest with you, it's hard to say that He's 100% Lord. But I think He's 95% Lord, and I own the other 5%. Hyun-Young, Jesus has risen. This Jesus is God. Can you truly confess that He is your Lord in front of the living Jesus? Go home and try praying as you think carefully about who is the true Lord in your life. God will make you realize who really owns your life. On the way back home, I was really confused. On one hand, I was furiously angry, but strangely enough, I couldn't get rid of the thought that I should really think about who my true Lord was. Who could my real Lord be? Is it Jesus? Or is it me? For the rest of the week, I kept asking myself these questions. Funnily enough, I was terrified of his claim that there was no salvation if I didn't receive Jesus as Lord. I thought, on the 1 in a million chance that I don't have Jesus as my Lord, I'm going to hell. What should I do? I was so scared that I was careful of everything, even when I was driving, because of the thought that I would go to hell if I died now. Jesus, just until I receive salvation, please keep me alive. The words would just come out from my mouth. The fact that I was so fearful of death, and that I had to seriously think about who the Lord of my life was, signaled to me that something was wrong in my faith. Seeing me struggle with these thoughts, the brother suggested that I make a decision. His words were like the commitment of faith that Joshua had declared to the Israelites at Shechem. Choose for yourself whom you will serve. But for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. I stopped everything for a week and studied Pastor Sung-Ro Kim's sermons on the resurrection and the church's resurrection booklet as though I was preparing for a big exam. During this time, God clearly showed me what was at the center of my heart through Genesis chapter 3. I was shocked to find out that the heart of Adam and Eve, when they ate the forbidden fruit, was the same as the heart of Satan, who wanted to become God. It wasn't just mere disobedience, but a frighteningly wicked heart that wanted to become like God. At the center of my heart, the heart that wanted to change the world through classic literature, humanism, and education, was this thought. Jesus, your power is not mighty enough to change this world. We need real action in order to transform this world. Even with prayers, if I don't take any action, nothing will be accomplished. It is action that will change the world, not you, and I will change this world in my own way. In my heart, the Lord who ruled the world had thoroughly been me. I had said that I believed in Jesus, but the fact was that I had trusted my own strengths and efforts more. I realized that my life had been hard, and that I had been dejected when I failed the qualifiers because I had been my own Lord. I wanted to break this cycle that was making my life painful. The church brother suggested that I go to the summer retreat, and I told him that I would go with him with a joyful heart. On the first day of the retreat, the pastor said that he hoped for those who only knew about the resurrection to come to truly believe in the resurrection. It sounded as if he were talking about me, and my heart was touched greatly. I reflected that I was exactly like the disciples of Jesus who had trained for 3.5 years with him, but had denied him at the most crucial moment. In the same way, I had also betrayed Jesus to follow the teachings of this world. But the reason those disciples could come back and give up their lives for the mission that Jesus had given to them was because they had clearly seen for themselves that Jesus was God through his resurrection.
Amen.
When it became clear to me that Jesus is God through his resurrection, I realized what kind of things I'd done to Jesus and what my sin was. I had been mocking and ignoring Jesus all this time, which meant that I had been mocking and ignoring God Himself. Though it was a different time and place, I had been the one who had nailed Jesus to the cross. I repented the sin of not believing in Jesus and accepted Him as my Lord in the center of my heart.
Amen.
When the resurrection revealed to me that this world is temporary and that there is an eternal heaven, it became clear how I should live the rest of my life. All the social influence and success I had pursued in order to change the world became garbage, and my only purpose was clear. My mission was to preach the gospel that God had given to us. As soon as I accepted the risen Jesus as Lord, my perspective, which had been fixed upon this world, was instantly turned upward toward heaven. As soon as I returned to my school, I started sharing the gospel. On the first day of school, I shared the story of the risen Jesus to the students in my home classroom. I sincerely wanted every one of these precious first graders to receive the risen Jesus as their Lord and live a heavenly life, so that we could go to heaven together and live forever with God even after death. Thankfully, all the students in our class now confess that Jesus is the living God and the Lord of their lives. This is what they confess. Jesus has risen from the dead. This Jesus is God. I have been saved by accepting Jesus as my Lord in the center of my heart. After that, I shared the gospel with other teachers, and now, with God's grace, have formed a Bible study group to share the good news of the resurrection. One day, a student of mine came to me for some counseling. Mr. Sun, I cannot sleep at night. Every night, I have a nightmare that a black monster is trying to eat me. Last night, it came in the form of a snake and ate me. I shared the gospel with him again, and he sincerely received Jesus as his Lord. I shared with him the promise in 1 John, "He who was born of God protects him, and the evil one cannot touch him." That student doesn't have nightmares anymore and sleeps peacefully.
Amen.
I thought about how, all this time, I'd been with my students, but I hadn't cared deeply enough about their needs and felt remorseful. I pledged to become a teacher that would not only protect these young souls from the evil one's schemes, but also help and care for them in areas of their lives that were unseen. I have been spending a lot of time on the bleachers at the school field during lunch hours, and there are always students who wear indoor shoes in the field all the time. Then, I suddenly become a strict teacher and yell, "You! With the indoor shoes! Come over here!" And the student becomes afraid he will get scolded and comes over intimidated. Then I smile widely and ask him, "Have you heard of the good news?" His expression brightens and he answers, "No. What is the good news?" Then I start with, Jesus has risen from the dead, and share the good news of the resurrection with them. This is how I evangelize with indoor shoes. In the past, I tried with all my strength to change students in the world with the teachings of this world. But now, I am certain that Jesus, who has proven to be the truth by the power of his resurrection, is the only answer to changing this world.
Amen.
There is strength in the gospel.
Amen.
There is power in the gospel.
Amen.
And so I have devoted the rest of my life to sharing this gospel. For the rest of my life, in the field of education, as a witness to the resurrection, I will live an admirable life. Thank you.
If you'd like to see more stories about how the gospel changed lives, visit us at facebook.com/HMUOnlyJesus or Google us at HMU Only Jesus.